Be here today with such a group of distinguished people on the panel and with my media colleagues as well. It's also 27 years exactly today since I first joined NDTV. So I'm very happy to use those 27 years when I'm talking about the past, the present, and what will hopefully be the future of journalism. It's wonderful to have former Chief Minister S.M. Krishna here, current Chief Minister Mr. Bommai and Sri Ramalu as well, all of whom I have troubled a lot in the past. I've chased after them with mics and asked them difficult questions, and I must say they've always been absolute gentlemen through it all, so it's very nice to be there with them today. Now, I'll be talking largely about TV journalism because that's what I know, that's what I've lived in for the last 27 years and more. Before NDTV as well, I was with Doordarshan for some years as well. And I started at a time when television journalism was Doordarshan. If you turned on the news, if you were watching the news, it was only Doordarshan. Now that news was straightforward, no views, it was just news. There were no frills, there were no frantic breaking news supers, there were no fancy graphics, there was no Justin, it was just straightforward basic news. With news readers, not anchors with huge personalities and wanting to be the stars of the show and wanting to have their views put across. They were news readers. They read the news, they gave you the news. It was perhaps a much more peaceful time without the sensationalism that has come to be part of the news today. When we covered communal clashes, which of course have been happening for a long time, when we covered those communal clashes, there were certain rules that we had to follow. We didn't mention the community. We didn't say Hindu or Muslim or Christian. We mentioned communal clashes. Our brief was don't make a bad situation worse, which is a big change from today where very often, too often, we find the media actually fanning the flames, making a situation worse by perhaps getting into it, by letting the anchor's own opinions get out there, making a situation worse. I hope I've not made it sound too romantic. Was it an ideal situation back then? No, it wasn't an ideal situation. The news was selected and approved by the government. Doordarshan was the official broadcaster. It gave the official news, the official sanctioned news by the central government. And I can see my former news editor here, Mr. Sheshchandra also. It was a very challenging time for people in the local kendras, in the Doordarshan kendras around the country. If the state government was different from the central government, they had to balance the chief minister of the state with the central government. It was a difficult time for them. And as reporters here, whenever a central minister came down, we covered every single thing they did. When the Prime Minister came down, we covered every single thing they did. And it was always with a very straightforward coverage, not like now, where if we're covering, we are running with our mics to ask you something on a controversial question. It's very rarely about the coverage itself. It's usually, but this happened, what do you say? We wait on the sidelines of a formal official function in order to corner the politician to get an answer. Well, it helped me see a lot of the state, which I might not have seen otherwise. I went to Paugada, I remember, for a farmer credit card release. North Karnataka, different parts of the state, I've managed to see because of this, actually. Loan Mela, Janat Pujari's loan melas. We went all over the state covering those loan melas, and that was an experience. But again, it was not perfect. Controversial issues were not covered at all. Veerappan, who was one of the biggest news angles of Karnataka and something which somebody who missed S.M. Krishna really had to deal with at a very awkward time. When my husband Nandakumar actually went into the jungles with a team that was looking for Veerappan, the day after he left, the day when he came back to Doordarshan, he heard that the team had been ambushed and many people had been killed. The police officers who were with him, whom he'd been speaking to, had been killed. He had the footage of the team. He ran for uplink. The Daily News editor said, "We don't do crime stories. Doordarshan doesn't cover crime stories." He did push, he did persevere, and it did get on air. There was also no questioning of politicians, no harsh questioning. We would listen to what politicians had to say, and it would be reported. If the mic was there, it was just to hear what they said. I think those may be happier times for politicians, certainly more peaceful. I think there was no tough questioning, no questioning at all. Things began to change, especially at election time. There were live questions to politicians at that stage, and I remember covering live the 1989 elections, I think. Gundu Rao was there, and I remember asking him. He had expressed views about the Congress, which were very different from what he had said earlier. And I remember asking him about just that, contradicting him, asking him a question. And you could see he was taken aback that this was actually being asked to him on live television. It was a wonderful experience, really. Private channels came in, different stories were done. We did different stories and we did them in different ways. We didn't have to only follow the straightforward government live. We could question, we could do other points of view as well. There were budgets for covering those stories. When I was in Doordarshan, I remember when we went to Delhi, it was a long time ago, we were given 110 rupees to cover our stay, 3 meals a day, and 110 rupees. So you can imagine how many relatives, how many friends we requested favors from in order to stay there. When I joined private television, it was a revelation to me that somebody would take care of my hotel bill, I'd be getting an allowance for my food. The budget's spending on stories as well, it was so different. That terrible time for the state when Veerappan actually kidnapped Dr. Rajkumar. NDTV actually hired a helicopter to fly a correspondent there to report on it. The budgets were very different. We could spend, we could travel, we would travel in our OB van across the state, across South India, just to report on things. Initially, that was back then when television news was a little more prosperous. Budget was not a problem. The challenges of the past, doing wider journalism on wider subjects, covering sensitive subjects, covering controversial issues, and questioning authority. Those were the big challenges of the past. Coming to the present, we have so many channels, and from days of being careful about not mentioning the community, we actually find that sometimes channel whip up a frenzy, sometimes making a bad situation worse. We have senior news editors tweeting views, talking about things which can actually make a situation worse, judgmental, critical, biased. And the media, some part of the media trotting out what the central government says, some part of the media only critical of the government. It seems like it's a with us or against us situation. The media is polarized, the media is divided. The old-fashioned days of neutrality, of a reporter, of an anchor being neutral, those seem to be over. When we talk about both sides journalism, it's with a bit of disparagement, it's not a complimentary term. Both sides journalism means that you're not taking a stand, you have to take a stand, which is very sad because I think the main function of reporting is reporting. We have to question authority, we have to highlight injustices on both sides. We should not be only on this side, only on that side. Both sides are faults, both sides are virtues. We need to question authority, we need to hold people to account, but we should not be in one corner. And it's not just politics. The problems today are like the sensationalism of news. What happened after the death of Sushant Singh Rajput, where there were media trials, where people were found guilty, there were witch hunts. The celebrity, the watching of celebrities so closely. That is very sad. With the multiple channel, has there come a multiplicity of views? Has there been greater freedom? No, we're seeing a greater crackdown on reporters who are critical or who question authority. Most recently, of course, from Bengaluru, Mohammed Zubair of Alt News, picked up on, for a reason which many would think not really valid, a 2018 tweet quoting from a film, a joke. Many people feel that it was overkill, the reaction to that and his arrest. Many people are actually questioning that. Another huge challenge today, the impact of social media, spreading fake news, spreading hysteria, spreading panic. And our role as journalists to have to check every single time a false tweet comes out, false report comes out, we have to go and check it out. Is it true? Is it not true? That's a huge challenge as well. Is it all bad? No, of course not. Technology is so much better. We can go live from anywhere. We can go live on a phone. We can cover this live now from a phone. Things are faster, it's more accessible. Everybody, wherever they are, can watch the news, can understand the news in their hands. They consume news differently. It's accessible everywhere. The days of us who remember going back and sitting in front of the television and watching the 8 o'clock news and 9 o'clock news, those days are largely over. Especially the young consume news differently. It is the content of the news that is a matter of concern today, not the technology of it. It is the content which really needs to be looked at. It is a difficult phase for the Indian media now, and hopefully it'll get better. So the challenges today, fighting fake news from social media and elsewhere, sensationalism, needing to keep it balanced, and also the polarization of the media. You are with us or against us. That's very sad. And I must also, at this point, talk about the politicians here in Karnataka who have always been accessible, who have always spoken, who have always had a different style from politicians in neighboring states or in the north as well. They have been accessible, they have answered the questions, and I will have to say that over the years. They've always spoken. Coming to the future, I'm also teaching now, and I really wonder what world my students will be getting into, our media students. Technically, like I said, they are gadget gurus. They know exactly how to get their news. They can get the news when they want it. They can get the news they want. And we must still have hope. There are still voices being raised for the freedom of the media, talking about what needs to be done. I hope that curbing of the media in many ways is just a phase. I hope the arrests of journalists for frivolous reasons stops. The harassment stops. I hope this is just a phase. I would love a return to some of the values of old-style journalism, while keeping the excitement and the pace of the new. We can't go back to the straightforward news reading with no views. We have to have the excitement, the pace, the ability to question authority, but it must be with a bit of grace, dignity, no sensationalism, and knowing that peace is the most important thing. And for this, unity in the media is very important when it comes to holding people accountable. If you're only going to ask questions to those set and I'm only going to ask questions to that set, it doesn't make sense. The media needs to be united as it fights for this in speaking truth to power, which is why I'm very happy today that there is media unity on show here with the Press Club, the Media Academy, and the KUWJ all coming together for this. It's not just a simple thing because people do have different points of view. The media has to be united for this. It's up to all of us that the future of journalism comes from a bit of a nosedive it's in now. No, it's in a big nosedive right now, and comes to what it should be. Agency to question power, to right wrongs, to be the voice of the voiceless. It may be naive, it may be idealistic, but we really have to, as journalists, try and make this world a better place, try and right the wrongs, question those in authority, hold them to power. It's up to us in the media, it's up to the senior politicians as well, to let us be free, because it's so important in democracy to have a free media, to have media that is free to question things. And I'm very hopeful that with the coming together, the attention being paid to media by the senior politicians here, by the senior journalists here, I'm hopeful that in the future we'll come out of this nosedive and Indian media will fly once again. Thank you very much.